Welcome to Café Technika.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Café Technika. This is Tom Roberto, your Technology Shaman. Today, I am very excited to have TechGirlJen with us today. She is an influencer on Instagram and other social media platforms. And I ran into her recently and we were talking and we thought it would be a great idea to kind of share our ideas with you guys. Jen, please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Tom. And thanks so much for having me on the podcast. Hello, everyone. I'm Jen and I am TechGirlJen, known on social media platforms. And I'm a content creator, a teacher turned content creator, I guess. I've been on all of the platforms for just a little over a year. And I've had tremendous growth in just showing people how to basically use their iPhones.
I didn't realize that you've only been doing this for about a year, right?
Yeah. I started last spring, of 23, March of 23.
Wow, that's crazy. So you've really had a lot of growth within like a short period of time.
Yeah, it was unexpected and crazy. But, and it's been really hard to keep up with the growth, right? But I've learned a ton of things about content creation and social media while I've been on this journey, but it's been totally worth it, 100%.
That's cool. Wow, I didn't realize that. So what were you doing before this? So like, how did you kind of get in? And like, obviously you're very tech oriented. So like, where did that all come from and start?
Well, honestly, it started when I was really young. I've always been really good at technology. It's just one of my superpowers that I was blessed with. As a teacher, I taught for 10 years and I used to help teachers in their classrooms with classroom tech all the time. And they would just be like, hey, that's really cool what you're doing. Can you just show me how to do that? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So I just go to here and I do this and then I ended up moving into a role as a professional development coach in technology, working with teachers. And then I got into instructional design just to kind of do some more teaching. And I was actually working, it's a really interesting story. I was actually working in a corporate role as a corporate learning and development specialist, at a very big corporation. And I was doing a lot of like compliance training. I was building compliance training. I was running new hire orientation, and it was kind of like the same thing over and over and over. So
very interesting side of technology, right? Like,
yeah. Really get to teach a whole lot of technology. It was more, what does this legal term mean? I don't know. But
yeah.
Crazy. So one day I'm messing around on TikTok and somebody shot some sort of video and I'm like, I'm always learning something on TikTok. I'm like, oh, that's really cool, and I decided to shoot a video and I don't quite remember what the very first one was, but I do remember the very first one that went viral. And it was me showing people how to use this accessibility feature on their phone where they could like back tap their phone and it gives them an option of like 2 or 3 different things that you can do. And of course, that video, I made it not thinking anything. My hair is a disaster, like no makeup on. I'm just like the worst possible PR presence on screen. And that video took off. And that video brought in a ton of people because they were like, whoa, that's so crazy. And so I'm like, oh, cool. Let's do another one. So on my lunch break, I would literally sneak away during my lunch break, either go into the bathroom or go find a quiet conference room somewhere. And I would just shoot a video of like, I have all this knowledge in my head, all this iPhone knowledge.
Yeah.
And I carried around. I spend a lot of time in my settings on my phone. I'm kind of a nerd that way. Like I'm in there. I'm like, oh, that's really neat. I didn't know. I mean, I'm learning something every day. And it's like, well, I started to pay attention to what the audience was, where they were coming from. And I noticed it was an older population that I was hitting really, really hard. And I realized that there's such a learning gap there, right? I'm a Gen Xer. We grew up no technology, minimal technology. And
That's right.
Then all the technology. And boomers really not so much. And so they still have to use all of the technology today, whether it's, paying digitally at a cash register, or, finding how to turn down the volume on their phone, or, learning how to use a MacBook if they've always used a PC, right? So I'm like, oh, there's really a need here. So my husband was like, I hit the first 100, I hit my 1,000 people. And he's like, wow, you really have something here. What are you going to do? And I'm like, I guess
that's cool.
I guess I'll just keep going. So I kept going, and I eventually left that job and took it on full time. So I took the leap to just do content creation full time, which was crazy.
Yeah, right. No, I get it. It's scary. Yeah. No, it's scary as hell. But you know what though? Like, your background really plays into kind of the message that I'm trying to promote, right? So like, you're teaching people, you're coaching people, you've found the niche of like the Gen X boomer, where it's like, hey, there's some stuff here that now has been lost to time, but there's still a lot of people that remember the world before the internet, right? Like, I'm sort of a zennial, right? Like between Gen X and millennial. And it's the same thing. Like, I remember growing up without all of this stuff. So it's like, you have a lot of knowledge there, and I feel like it lends itself to what you're doing. So like, you're in technology, you're teaching this stuff. How do you keep technology, like in your personal life, from consuming you, right? Because it's so easy to get involved in this stuff and then just lose yourself to it.
It 100% is. And I would be lying to you if I told you that hasn't happened to me, where I'm completely consumed, right? 2 a.m. on my iPad, putting content together.
Sure.
But I think the important thing about not letting it consume you is finding a hobby, finding something that you love and doing that. So my hobby is theater. So I like to perform. I like to direct. I like to be at the theater painting sets. I like to run the lights and the sound. And that literally gets me off of my phone, off of social media. It's just a place for me to express myself, be around people, and be in a community without, letting technology take over my life. And, the other interesting thing is I'm not a big TV watcher. Like, I cannot binge watch TV to save my life. I'm just too ADHD to pay attention. But I can't sit still, my creative brain. I think that's another reason why I do theater is I'm not a sedentary person. And I don't. So that's one technology that I really could live without is TV. And I hate to say it, but it's so true.
That's funny. It's interesting you bring that up. Like, so on one of my last episodes, the company I was with years ago, I started my career in, the two guys came out of theater. Like, they took a theater approach to designing digital signage and things like that when it was still early days. It's interesting that you have that background. Like, now it's got my gears turning towards like, maybe that's actually what drives some of that creative stuff, like, combining the two things. Interesting. So like, is there any of the tech that it has kind of, you think, attributed to some of your success though? Like, do you think that some of the stuff that's consuming you is making you kind of successful?
Yeah. I mean, what has contributed, of course, just the fact that Apple's always releasing new content software, right? They're always updating their devices. They're always updating their iOS. So features are always changing. And also, I mean, AI, the way AI is just starting to...
That's where I was going to go,
just exploding. And as I think about future content, AI is really going to take up some of my, I plan on teaching my population of people all about it, because a lot of people are afraid of it or just unaware of the capability of it. And I think that there's a whole world of opportunity, no matter what your age is, with AI, if you understand it.
I totally agree. And like, so it's funny you went there, because that's kind of where I was going, right? Like, a lot of people have this negative idea of AI and like what it can do, and they've seen all the bad stuff. And look, it like anything, you can, if you take an iPhone and throw it at somebody's head, it's pretty dangerous, right? Like,
yes.
it's how you use it, right? So like, I think with AI, there's a lot of negative stuff, but nobody's really exploring the stuff that you can do and how you can not like cheat the system, but use it to do your job better or to be a better person. So it's like, where do you sit on that? Like, so I'm sure you're playing with some of this stuff. Like, what are your tips, and what is the TechGirlJen tips and tricks on AI today?
Oh my gosh. I honestly, I try them all, and I'm so guilty. I follow a lot of newsletters and AI just to kind of see what's coming out. But as someone who's a creative, I tend to be not so good at processes. So when I started this, I never intended for this to become a business, and it's become a business, but I don't know how to run a business. So for me, AI has kind of been my business partner, where if I need to brainstorm or if I need to put something into an organized spreadsheet, which I hate spreadsheets, I hate them, but if I need to put them there, then, AI can do that for me. If I just need to rephrase something. So all of these little things that I'm discovering, and I'm not done discovering. I mean, I just discovered a tool the other day that was incredible. You literally, it's a video editing tool, and you upload a video, and what it does, it transcribes the video on one side of the screen while the video's on the other. And in order to edit the video, you just have to edit the text. So if you know how to edit a Google Doc, it does all the hard cuts for you and just seamlessly puts them together. And in minutes, I edited a 7-minute video one day, and it took that AI tool 2 minutes to do it. It would have taken me 2 hours. So
100%. Yeah. I actually have something similar for the podcast. Like it does that with audio. Like you can do it. That's a great point though, right? Like there's so many things that just make you more efficient, and there's not like a bad thing to that. It's just how it works, right?
It is. And there is this little tiny element of, am I cheating the system? Like, am I cheating the test? The teacher's watching, like I'm going to be in trouble. Yeah. Because even my kids will say to me, I have teenagers, and they'll say, well, can I use AI? And I'm like, yes, you should use AI. Why are you afraid of it?
100%.
You should use it. But it's not cheating the system. There should be no argument that it makes our lives easier, right? And everything has done that in technology. Our phones make our lives easier, right? Our computers make our lives easier. Our Alexa in the house makes things easier. Right. So I'm all for making things easier and working smarter, not harder.
I totally agree with you. I mean, so you bring up kids. Like I have a 10-year-old son, and I've kept him sort of unplugged for a bit. Like he has an iPad and he does all the things that other kids do, but like I haven't, as a technologist, I haven't like really like gotten into the nitty gritty with him, because I'm just like, I want to see how he progresses, right? Like he's into building and Legos, and it's like, that's cool, man. Like, I don't want to push my love on you.
Right. How
do you keep your kids like, kind of in their lane? Like, because it's so easy to just let them go and then God knows what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, kids are a little bit older. So I have a 13-year-old, and then I have an 18-year-old who's going off to college in the fall. And my 13-year-old, he likes to see what I'm doing, and he'll come to me and say, oh, look what I did with ChatGPT today. But he wants to be a teacher. So I feel like I've already influenced him in another direction. He's like, he wants to be a teacher. I'm like, okay, go for it. Do your thing. Teaching is a great skill. But my other one, I don't know, like he's not so much into it. He's more into sports. So they've really been great kids. Like I don't ever feel like they were on screens too much, because I didn't really put up strict boundaries. I kind of allowed them, like you said, I kind of just allowed them to explore. I always had devices in my house though, because that's just who I am. But they learned how to use the devices and how to, not take advantage of them. They knew, hey, it's bedtime. We're putting our devices down. One of the rules that I always had is no phones at the dinner table. And that's just something that I still have, right? Like it's dinner time. We don't need to have our phones at the dinner table. This is an opportunity for us to talk. And then you can go to your rooms and do whatever, you want to do. But this is sacred time, sacred family time.
I love the retro routine approach to that, where it's just like, take it offline. You don't have to put up all the blocks, right? Like we're not doing content filtering in the house. Like, I love these people where they're like, oh, well, you're really techie. You got to have that going. It's like, actually, I have very little of that going.
Yeah. People don't realize, right?
Yeah. 100%. Well, so like you are, but you're in that age group, right? Like you've got an 18-year-old. So like, he or she will be in the workforce, within the next several years. So it's like, what are you excited about in seeing those generations? Like, because I feel like when we were kids, it was like, okay, we watched them get into technology and it was obvious they're going to go into the tech field. And then there was like a lull almost. And now it seems like we're almost back to that a little bit where it's like, oh, they're really good with AI and they're very savvy. Like, what are you seeing with the generations and what are you concerned with on that?
Oh, I think that they have a lot of work to do. I'm a little worried about, they
Yeah, right.
My son who's 18, he knows it. He's like, oh, I'm going to vote this year.
Yeah.
I'm going to do all these things. And I'm like, yep, your generation's in charge soon. So,
yeah. Good luck. Fix it.
Fix it. No, I don't know. I think that I don't expect much. I don't think he wants to go into tech. I mean, he's using tech tools all the time. I don't know. Like I said, I've always let my boys, I've always let them explore on their own, come to their own conclusions. I've never forced them, what direction they needed to go. So I'm really curious to watch his growth in college and see how is AI going to shift the college experience? Like, I'm really curious to see that.
Right.
How are colleges doing that? And what's the future of college in reality? You hear so many things about colleges, maybe, they're losing enrollments because people are learning skills on their own. I mean,
100%.
I learned how to fix a refrigerator on YouTube. So
that's true, though.
It is, and with AI, you can create learning plans and guides, and it's just incredible the opportunity that's available. So it would not surprise me if he comes to me in a couple of years and says, Mom, I did the college for a few years, but I have a really good idea for this thing that I've discovered, and I think it's going to go somewhere. And I would totally support that.
That's interesting because it's so weird that you said that. So like I was talking to somebody and I said, college was never about the stuff you learned in college because you could learn that on your own. It was about going through the experience of college and like the framework of how to learn, how to, absorb info. And you're right. Like now kids are coming in with more of that and they have more tools. So it's like, to me, I could easily see 4 years becoming 2 years. And then it's like, well, look, there's different facets of this and we can break it down differently. But like, I think people are coming in way more prepared now.
They are. But I think the important thing about college is the experience of growing into an adult. I feel like that's where you learn that you've got to find your own food, every time it's mealtime. You've got to keep up with your laundry. You've got responsibilities to make at the class. Mom's not coming and knocking on your door going, hey, are you up?
That's right.
That's you.
Yeah.
And professors, come or not, you're paying for this. So
that's true.
I think that's going to be that's the greatest part of college. And I know it was for me. And I'm hoping it will be for my son too, is just learning how to literally adult.
Yeah, no, that's true. That I don't think technology is anywhere as close to getting involved in like how to become a functional human being. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's like the hammers trying to teach the builders to build. Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Not.
What were some of the things like? Is there something that your parents instilled in you that has carried through, right? Like, that's another generational divide. Like, is there something that stuck with you where you're like, this was, changing for me as a person from my parents?
My parents were both workaholics, right? And so they were always working. And I think that's something that has stuck with me. I don't think there's ever really been a period of time where I'm not working on something. Even when I worked for a tech company and I experienced layoffs a few years ago when all the layoffs were going on in tech, and I still had something going on. I was working on other projects, or I was consulting, or I was helping someone build a course, or I was doing different things. So they always worked. and they valued that. They valued their work. So there was that element of not being lazy, I think, is something that has carried along. Although it would be nice if I could just sit and relax for a while sometimes.
Relax, yeah. Yeah, listen, I think that's great. Like, I think work ethic is awesome. And like, if that's something that you got, I think that's awesome. Well, so like, how do you feel about technology impacting that kind of mentality, right? Like, do you think it's brought people closer together? Do you think it's made them more workaholics? Do you think it's pushed people apart? Like, what's your take on that?
I guess it's kind of a mixed bag there, because technology can bring people together. So like, I think about what I do and the reach that I have. I would never have that kind of reach with people in my early years if that wasn't around. I would just not be able to reach that many people and support them. But also, there is an isolation element to the technology, right? It's very easy to get drawn in, and you're on the platforms, social media, and you're reading everything you need to know. So you don't have to go attend that class, or you don't have to go visit that cousin, because you've seen their Facebook posts for the last week, and you know all of the things that are happening. So while you can stay connected to your high school friends, right? Some of us still have high school friends that we follow. You're not really, getting to build those relationships. So I think it's a two-sided coin, really. I think there's a lot of isolation, but yet it can also build community.
Yeah, look, I look at you, and it's like, for a year's growth and to see how you've connected to people, that certainly would weigh, hey, it really connects people. But I always have the sneaking suspicion that it does make a lot of people feel isolated, because it's like you're either part of that tech bubble, or you're not, right? So it's like, and you mentioned boomers earlier, so like, they're really getting targeted by all of the scams and things like that. So is that part of your education? Like, do you touch on that all the time?
I try to, yeah. In fact, I've actually gotten a few of those scams come through my stuff, right? And so anytime something like that has happened to me, I immediately shoot content about it and say, okay, this is happening. I need you to pay attention. But yeah, I actually did, last year, I did a whole summer safety series where each day I dropped a tip about, whether it's phishing or understanding a scam, what things you can look for, keeping your phone safe and locked, how to erase it if somebody takes it. But there's all kinds of things that are hitting that population. And the best thing I can do for them is just empower them with knowledge. And that's what I do. So I stay up to date on as much as I can what's going on, whether it's this new scam or this new trend is happening. I try to tap into as much of that for them, so that then I can take all of that information and then just kind of break it down for them and say, okay, this is going to be really important for them. I need to make sure that they're aware that this is happening. And it's been really beneficial, because I've had a lot of people reach out and say, hey, that tip you shared the other day, that happened to me, and I'm so glad I saw your tip first, or I would have clicked the link, or this would have happened. Thank you so much for making us aware.
I think that's huge. Like, the fact that you could literally save somebody's life savings, or like, just security of their identity. Like, to me, that's something that's sorely needed. Like, there's not enough people talking about it, especially to the right, like demographic, right? So it's like, that to me is very, very important. It's like, it's totally overlooked, and people aren't doing it. But I also think it has something to do with clarifying. Like, I was watching your content, and it's like the way that you speak, you get to the crux of it very quickly. Like, what are your tricks for clarifying, like simplifying all of these complex topics?
It's a superpower, Tom. That's what it is.
It is a superpower. You're like, you need a cape behind you,
Yeah. Honestly, in the back of my mind, I'm always like, how would I explain this to a fifth grader? I taught elementary school, so it probably comes from that background. I had first graders, I had third graders, I had fifth graders. And you just need to get to the point, make it clear and understandable. And that's usually enough. So and I'll test my husband out first. Usually I'll create the content and I'll let him watch it first. And I'm like, do you understand this? And he's like, well, no. And then I'm like, I'll go back to them. I'm like, okay, let me revamp this and make it a little slimmer.
Yeah.
Because you can't go tech. I don't, and I really, what really burns me sometimes is when I hear people talking. Like I've been to conferences and stuff, and people will talk way above their audience,
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, why are you talking up here? Come down here where your audience is. Read the room, right? And that will help you reach them more, because if you're speaking over them, people just get intimidated, and they just, I used to. One of the things I would do when I worked for a tech company is I would look at some of their slide decks that they would do, and I would help to break those down to be a little more understandable. And I would go, what are you talking about here? This makes no sense to the average individual that works here. Like, what are you saying?
Yeah.
So just thinking in terms of how would if I explain this to a child or to a fifth grader, would they understand it? Because actually most of us read on a fifth grade level anyway. I think
that's right.
That's where we're at.
So I think, the other kind of side of that coin, right, to talking through scams and generational divide and things is like, how do you keep yourself hip? Like, what are some of the sources and things that like make you kind of hip to some of the stuff that's coming out?
Oh, hip. How do I stay hip? Well, I got to tell you, like, there's so much good content out on social. I follow a ton of other creators because they're fantastic. And even to just sometimes think about how I'm presenting content, and getting some tips, because a lot of them have been doing, like, social media comes so natural to them, and they've just got all these great ideas. But also, LinkedIn is a great place for me. I like to connect with other people in the tech space, people in the AI space. I connect with educators, content creators, reading newsletters. So I guess instead of watching TV and watching the news, what I do is I'm, reading my feeds, learning from different people, so to just kind of stay hip. But I mean, I don't do any TikTok dances. Like, I did that and I gave that up. I'm not that hip. My husband, he likes to do those kinds. I do not. Like, I'll just film you. Go ahead and do what you want to do.
That's so funny. Well, like, even though for like what you're doing though, right? Like, so LinkedIn's huge for me. That's actually where I have most of my following, and that's, I use it for business, obviously, and things like that. But like, where is that where you're finding info? Like even just new tech trends and new tech apps and things like that. Like, where does that come from?
Honestly, the algorithms bring it to me on, mostly I find it on Instagram, I would say. Instagram and YouTube would probably be my top two places. I don't have a huge following on YouTube, but I do go out there and I get tons of things pushed to me of creators who are talking about the iPhone, creators who are talking about the iOS or Macs or just technology in general, or scams. Like, those things just show up organically. And so I watch them, right? Because one, what's this creator talking about? And how are they presenting it? And is this important information that I need to share? And then Instagram, I just like everybody else, I go down the rabbit hole sometimes, or I'm just looking, and every now and then I notice that I have a lot of this kind of content that just shows up. I follow a girl that does all cybersecurity stuff, and she's great. And, sometimes I think to myself, is it wrong if I do something about this? Like, am I stealing someone's content? But I also feel that we all should be sharing each other's stuff, and we should be learning from each other, right? Because
of course,
audience is probably different than my audience, and so that's kind of where I get all of mine. And email newsletters, they're great. I get some really great ones, like
Interesting.
is a great one. I get so many good ones, and I just try to stay up to what's cool and hip, and what all the cool kids are doing. Because
there's one called TLDR that I looked into. That's interesting. I've never actually done those though.
You haven't done an email newsletter?
No, like I always feel like it's like sort of like scammy, and I'm just like, I don't know if I want this. That's interesting that's what you're using.
Well, I tell you, if you ever decide, as your podcast grows, you'll probably want to have a newsletter for your fans. They can sign up
for sure.
Free newsletter. And yeah, I mean, maybe you could teach them how to start a podcast, right? Like a lot of people like myself would love to start a podcast, but I have no idea where to start.
That's so funny.
Yeah, I mean, you could do it. And there's some great AI tools out there for that too, that will just help you write it. And it makes it so much easier.
Yeah, interesting.
Spam people either. I have a newsletter. I send it out once a week, but I don't like spamming people. I don't there are people that go a little crazy with the emails. Like you'll get like 5, 6, 7 emails a week from some one person. And I'm like, okay, like I'm unsubscribing now. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. What was the newsletter that you said you subscribed to?
Superhuman is one that I subscribe to. And there's one I think just called AI Tools. That's a good one. And Jack Appleby, he does a really good one. He you can find him on LinkedIn, and he talks all about content creation. He has a really good newsletter, and he's got a free newsletter and a paid one too. So there are some really good things you can get from either or. But you can look him up on LinkedIn. And I know somebody that knows me, that knows him, is probably going to be like, why didn't you say the name of his newsletter? And I'm like, I forgot what it was called. But he's great. I'll connect with you on LinkedIn, and
I'll share it for sure.
Follow him. But he's got a really good newsletter. So
that's really cool. Well, so like, I have like this obsession with like people's kind of frameworks and stuff. Like, I'm a huge Simon Sinek fan, and like essentialism and that whole thing. Like, is there a framework that you've kind of subscribed to? So you're mentioning certain people kind of in and around the industry. Like, is there something that you kind of live by, or you're like, this really is the way that I'm kind of gearing myself for?
I don't think really there's one. Like I said, I'm an ingester. I like to read, I love to learn. And so I don't think there's just one that I'm like, oh, this is the one I'm going to structure myself. Like, I think it's just a combination of my own life experiences as an educator and different audiences that I've taught. Plus, there's a ton of learning styles, and there's learning theories out, all over the place. So I think it's just my own style. I'm still kind of just feeling it out. Like I couldn't package my style if I wanted to, because it changes. It's always in growth mode. It's always, well, that didn't work. Okay, we're throwing that out, Oh, that worked. Okay, let's go with that. Oh, well, that's working now, but not later. Okay, we're going to get rid of it. It's very, very sporadic. So there's no real system, but I'm open. Like I'm not and I think I mentioned this earlier, I'm not a systems girl. It's just processes and systems, just makes me feel a little anxious.
I know. You know what it is? Like, I'm a creative too, right? Like, so I was into music, and like, I wanted to be a music teacher when I grew up. And I find some level of comfort when somebody like makes the world a little more digestible. Like, there used to be a website years ago called Printable CEO. And I think it's still there, and you can print out these little like forms to like do your day. And there was something so therapeutic about just looking at the form. Not that I ever used them, but like it was one of those things where like I aspire to have that in my life. Like, I want to be this organized.
Oh, totally. I mean, I would love to be organized, but like when I reach a level where I can pay someone to do all of that for me, I'm down. I'm like, just tell me what I need to do today and I'll do it. But like, please don't make me put it all together and organize the thought process and the lists and the tasks. It's
so true. My wife is the organizer. Like, she's the one. And then people are like, wow, your wife is like so like put together. And it's like, I need that. Like, it's what works. That's so funny. Well, so like, what does somebody have to do to grab your attention, right? So you're out there, you're online, you're obviously grabbing people's attention. What does somebody have to do to grab your attention? What are those traits?
Oh, it just needs to be something interesting, like something that I haven't heard of before, something new. Trending things is not really my jam. It's not those things. It's just something that like I know can be impactful to someone else. So if you're sharing something that I'm like, somebody else needs to know this information, that catches my attention. And well, cat videos too. Those
You're a facilitator. You're a facilitator. You see this stuff and then you go, all right, I gotta get this out. That's you kept saying it over and over again.
Stop it. You can't just kind of you can't mind. I'm not a mindless scroller. I can't.
Yeah.
Like, I'm always thinking, should I save that one? Because I think someone in my audience might need that, or, ooh, that's a really cool trick. I could use that later. Like, I mean, that's kind of just how the brain is going all the time.
Yeah. No, I get that. So I wonder if that's why you're kind of Apple, right? So you're very Apple centric, right? I usually ask people iOS, Android. It's obviously iOS for you, right?
Definitely. Yeah, I've been iOS my whole life, mostly ever since I gave up my BlackBerry and had my first iPhone. And what I love about Apple is it's easy. It's very accessible. You know, there are older folks who prefer Apples because it's just easier. The way their UI is, the way things are laid out. There are tons of hidden tricks and tips that, you know, you don't always know, but most people at this point in their life can pick up an iPhone and use it.
No, that's true. Same way.
Just the way it's laid out. And don't get me wrong, Android, you know, I know there's tons of Android users. I have a lot of followers who are Android users, and they're always like, when are you going to do Android stuff? I tried. Like, I bought an Android, and I hated it. I didn't like the way that things were. And it's just my brain is now programmed, you know, and it's kind of like PC or Mac. Well, I've used it both, and I used PC for years and years and years and years. But once you switch to a Mac, it's like, oh, I like
you can't go back. Yeah, you can't go back.
You can't. So it's just, I just think that they've always really thought of everything, and just their accessibility features alone are really thoughtful. And the way that they put their materials together.
No, I'm all Apple. I love Apple stuff. I have used Android. I obviously have to use some PC stuff and Android stuff at work. And I will say this to you. You should definitely check out some Chrome OS, Chromebook type stuff. It's sort of like somebody at Apple went to Google and was just like, hey, let's try this. So I'm obsessed with Chromebooks. Like, I buy them consistently and then just resell them to play with them. But like, it is very much that same mentality. And like, all of my family, my parents included, like when they say, well, what PC should I get? I'm like, you're either going to get a Mac or a Chromebook. Like, I'm not doing Windows. Like, I can't do it.
No, and I would have to agree. Chromebooks are great, and my kids all have Chromebooks for school, and that's what we used in classrooms, and I think it's great. Google is another one of those companies that they just keep it simple. They really keep it simple so that most users can kind of navigate on their own and figure it out, and that's what I've always really loved about them. So Google and Apple, I mean,
no, you can't go wrong. That's true.
You can't go wrong. I agree. And the Chromebook, it starts fast. I remember the very first when they first launched it, and I bought one, and I'm like, wow, this thing just fired up immediately.
Awesome. Yeah.
It was. And really, it's just like a giant iPhone with a keyboard.
It is. Yeah, it's a browser, and it's like, well, if you can't do it in the browser, you don't need it. Like, just get rid of it.
Wait, I don't have to put files on my desktop? What?
Yeah.
It's great. But you're exactly right. What you said, it's basically somebody from Apple probably went to Google, and they're like, hey,
100%. I was like, we got to make this really easy. Yeah,
we got to make this happen.
That's so funny. Yeah. Well, so I'll kind of divert from what I normally kind of go with here, but like, what are your tips and tricks? Like, so you have so many things that are out there from a content perspective, from education. Like, give me like 2 or 3 like high ones where you're like, everybody should check this out. Like, here's a huge tip or trick, or like, you know, the ones that you get asked all the time, even maybe personally.
Oh my gosh, you're making my brain hurt. I guess there's so many things like text messaging alone that you can do. And I think a lot of people don't know how to save favorites and pin their favorites to the top to make it easy to access. Photos, people ask me questions about photos all the time. And it's always, how do I take a photo, put it into an album, and delete it from the feed? And I'm like, okay, so you can't delete it from the feed because that's where it lives, right? The all photos section, or they call it recents. This is so confusing for people. One day Apple's going to hear my cry and they're going to change it, right? Did you see all those balloons? That was pretty sweet.
I love it.
One day they're going to change it. But like Recents is where all your photos live. And if you put them into an album, you're not taking them out of Recents and making another copy and putting them into an album. You're literally just categorizing it or tagging it. And it's just so that you can view it a different way. And people forget that when you go into your photos, it by default lands on Recents, but you don't have to view your photos that way. You can choose albums. And then if you just want to look at your son's graduation photos, you can.
Right.
I think that people don't realize that can change. So that's always a question I get. Another question I get is how can I get to my iCloud and get my photos from my phone to my computer, right? And I want to take them off of my phone and I want to put them on my computer. A lot of people don't realize that you can just go to any browser and type in iCloud.com and sign in with your Apple ID and password. And all of your stuff is there. Your photos are there, your notes, as long as you've backed them up.
Yep.
Everything lives there. So I would say that's big for a lot of people, not understanding where to go for that.
That's a good one. And you know what? I wish Apple would hear us and add iMessage to that so that you can get on there and do the texting right from the browser. Like that would be so amazing for me.
That would be cool. I mean, you can do it from a MacBook if you have the app.
Of course,
you're messaging from a MacBook. But I agree with you. I think that. Yeah, I think those are some really hot tips. There's so much coming with iOS 18. I've got the developer version downloaded on my phone. I don't know if you've been playing with it too, but I cannot wait to start sharing out some of these tips. Like I want to share them out now, and I'm trying to tread lightly because I'm not encouraging my audience to download the developer mode because it can be buggy, and if you're not used to that or you're not familiar with how that program works, then it can be very frustrating. But as soon as the public beta is launched, I'm hoping that I can start pushing out a little content, little bits, little pieces at a time, little bite-sized things. But I've been having a lot of fun just kind of exploring all of the things that are coming.
Jen, you're tickling everybody with a feather here. You're teasing them with what's to come. She's got it ready to go. You know. I'll be honest with you. There are a lot of. I've been doing a lot of research and like I do play with certain things and like I'll wipe devices and stuff. I'm a little like I like to be surprised. So like I wait and then it's just like, you know what? I won't get too far into this because then I'm not like as excited when it comes out and then I can't like binge some of this stuff. So like I do wait a little bit. I'm a little bit of a laggard with stuff like that. But I have seen some of the cool, like the AI tools that they've got built in there. Like they're really cool. I think that's going to be super cool.
Linking Siri and AI. I mean, Siri's already AI, but adding, the ChatGPT element is amazing. Do you know one of the features that I was most excited about was the schedule send in text messages that's coming?
It's awesome.
Because for someone with my scatterbrain, like if I need to remind my husband to do something at a certain time, I can literally in the morning when I'm fresh and good to go, type that in there and schedule it for later. And then he'd be like, well, why didn't you text me? I'm like, I forgot, no more. I forgot. I think that's a great feature, the schedule send on a text message.
That'll be good for work too, when you get that hot text message that you want to just send out real quick and make somebody pissed off. And then all of a sudden you go, maybe we shouldn't send that one. We'll cancel that one.
Let's just cancel, because it gives you time to like think about, do I really want to send that? And plus it's also another accessibility feature when you're working with people from different time zones. You don't, if you're a boss or you're managing someone, you don't want to send text messages to them or Slack messages to them super late at night, or if they're sleeping, like that's not cool. Don't blow up somebody's phone during their off hours. So I think that's great that they're doing that finally. Overdue, but I'm glad it's coming.
That's cool. That's cool. No, so look, it sounds like, as we've had conversation and kind of gone through things, I think your approach to this is exactly what I've been talking about for years now, where it's there's a blend of real life and kind of retro routines and then some new stuff. And when you put it together properly, it really makes you more efficient. But I think a lot of your success, from what I'm hearing, it does stem from the fact that you can clarify, you can simplify, you can facilitate. Like, I feel like that's an important thing that people shouldn't forget. And, as an educator, I would end with, give people that your take on how they should be looking at this stuff from a real life point of view, and that the technology is not really in control. It's the person, right?
Totally. I agree. They are totally in control. And I think that when they're empowered with that knowledge and they're able to confidently navigate that, like, that's my ultimate goal,
Right.
for people to have that confidence, and also for people not to have to ask younger generations, can you show me how to do this, who may not be as patient with them as they need, but for them to be empowered and not have to feel that feeling. I mean, we've all been there where we've had to ask somebody a little bit younger. I mean, my 13-year-old knows some things about some things. And I'm like, what does this mean? And he's like, Mom, don't ask me. That's stupid. Don't use that word. I can't use that word. Like, why not?
Yeah.
He's like, you just don't. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. But like, you don't want to have to ask.
That's so funny. Well, listen, Jen, I really appreciate you doing the podcast. I think your take on things is amazing. And for anybody listening, I'll turn it back to kind of give Jen, where you can find her. But her content's super simple. I would highly recommend everybody go check it out, subscribe. She gives great tips, and the way in which she's presenting that info really, is amazing. It's super simple and it makes you think. So, Jen, where can people find more about you? Where can they subscribe? Give yourself some shameless plugs.
Shameless plug time. Yes. All right. So you can find me on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. I'm on Lemon8. If anybody listening is on that channel yet, that's a TikTok child. And also, I'm on LinkedIn. You find me there. But my website is just TechGirlJen.com, and it shows all of my channels. And I've got some freebies out there on my page, some great downloads, and some other goodies to check out. And I am launching a community that's coming very, very soon. Actually, this month it's being launched. It's been quietly launched to my current subscribers, but it is definitely coming this month, where I'm trying to encourage a community of people just kind of supporting each other, but also a place to house all of my content. So more to come on that.
Very cool. Very cool. Can I do anything else to add more value for you, Jen? Is there anything that the Tech Shaman can do for Jen?
I don't know. I think we should collab and do something fun somewhere on social. Let's, if I can, get you seen in what you're doing and get people to listen, I think what you're offering is super valuable. A lot of people just like to listen and
Sure.
the conversation mode. So I think we could totally do a collab. But yeah, anytime, you want to tag me, feel free.
I will. Thank you very much. And I'd love to do that. So for everybody listening, thank you for tuning into this episode. We are here to kind of give you all of the retro routines and life before the internet and how you can apply that to today's technology-driven world. Thank you for listening. Please stay tuned. We have a lot more information and guests coming up, and we are very excited to have you. Thank you.
Oops. Bye-bye.